Do you want to be ahead of the game for the latest in arts, music, cuisine, and entertainment across the Middle East's most dynamic capital cities? Al Monitor is proud to launch our City Pulse newsletters, focused exclusively on local news, starting in Riyadh, Dubai, Istanbul, and Doha. Each week, our on-the-ground writers in these cities cover the latest cultural happenings and trends, so you have everything you need to know for the best local experiences. To subscribe for free, go to almonitor.com, that's al-monitor.com, and sign up on our newsletter page.
Welcome back to the Al Monitor Brief. I'm Adam Lucente. President Donald Trump announced on Tuesday that the U.S. would halt its bombing campaign against the Houthi forces in Yemen, saying the Iran-backed group had, quote, capitulated. Oman subsequently said they brokered a ceasefire between the two sides. So how did we get here? The Houthis have been attacking ships in the Red Sea since the start of the Gaza war between Israel and Hamas, wreaking havoc on global shipping. They halted the attacks around the time of the Gaza ceasefire and hostages deal in January, but resumed operations after the truce broke down in March. Trump subsequently authorized renewed U.S. strikes targeting the group. On Tuesday, hours before Trump's announcement, Israel conducted a heavy bombing campaign against the Houthi-controlled airport in Sana'a. That followed a Houthi missile successfully penetrating Israeli territory and hitting the Tel Aviv airport on Sunday. Israel was reportedly caught off guard by Trump's announcement, and Houthi spokesman Mohammed Abdeslam said on Telegram that their operations in support of Gaza, quote, will not cease. My guest this episode is Al Monitor's Pentagon correspondent, Jared Szuba. Jared takes us through the backstory of how the deal came to be, the posture of U.S. forces in the region, what the news means for Israel in the Gaza war, and how the U.S.-Iran nuclear talks fit into the equation. Hope you enjoy. Jared, welcome back to the Al Monitor Brief.
Adam, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. First question is, why did the Trump administration seek this pause in the conflict with the Houthis?
Well, Adam, we don't know that the Trump administration did seek it. It's not clear yet which side decided to tap out first, or what is probably more likely, both sides were sort of feeling out the situation in talks. It's obviously been reported that Steve Witkoff was in Oman, working with Omani mediators with the Houthis to come to some sort of arrangement over the past several weeks. But the president's announcement came as something of a surprise to at least some commanders, American commanders who were overseeing this campaign, although at the higher levels was, if not unexpected at that moment, not a surprise in general that the White House was losing interest in this campaign.
And what role did U.S. strikes on the Houthis play in bringing this deal about? Is there any indication about that?
No, I think it's too early to tell. You know, CENTCOM and U.S. military officials working on this campaign have said in recent weeks that in the less than 2 months that this reinvigorated strike campaign has been ongoing, that they have seen progress, but they have not detailed publicly in any explicit way, nor laid out any evidence of what that really means. The U.S. has struck roughly, if not more than 1,000 targets in Yemen since the president reauthorized this campaign back in mid-March. Some of those targets have been senior Houthi missile and UAV experts and officials, but the Pentagon isn't naming names. They're not providing any specifics as to whether the Houthi tactics or strategy has changed as a result of this renewed campaign. So it's very hard to say at this point that there's been any significant impact or any demonstrable impact of the U.S. campaign on Houthi decision making. What I think is probably more likely at this point is that the Trump administration early on, prior to launching this campaign, saw benefits to restarting the bombing ahead of the planned Iran negotiations over Iran's nuclear program, and some Trump officials hope over Iran's ballistic missile program, support for proxies, etc. Now that the framework in the U.S.-Iran talks has largely been tabled, the Houthi campaign is probably not serving much of a purpose in that regard for U.S. policymakers. In addition, you've seen the U.S. Navy has had a couple of accidents. Not surprising given the extremely intensive round-the-clock, off-the-deck carrier sorties that are being flown by F-18 squadrons. These are complex carrier launch and recovery operations that are going on around the clock, and they have resulted in a few incidents. Just yesterday, an F-A-18 coming in for a landing failed to successfully either engage the ship's tailhook mechanism or its magnetic catch, and the two pilots of the FA-18 had to eject, and the plane was ditched in the Red Sea, and the pilots had to be recovered. So that's not the first incident in which an FA-18 was lost. The Harry S. Truman strike group, which was involved in yesterday's incident, shot down one of the destroyers with the Truman's group, shot down an FA-18 in a friendly fire incident. I think it was in late December. There have been no U.S. casualties that have been reported, but obviously this campaign is taking a toll on the readiness and the maintenance cycles and the munition stockpiles, the magazine depth of the U.S. Navy and the associated air assets that have been carrying out this campaign.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with Jared Szuba after this short break.
Today's transformation of the Middle East is at the center of global geopolitics. Whether you're an analyst, diplomat, executive, or academic, you need the best reporting and analysis to understand what's really happening on the ground and what it means for the world. Al-Monitor is the award-winning independent leader in Middle East news. From Riyadh to Beirut, Abu Dhabi to Doha, and Baghdad to Tehran, our team of over 100 expert journalists report daily on the top stories driving the regional trends. Download our mobile app and subscribe to Al-Monitor to follow what leaders and decision makers are reading every day. Go to almonitor.com, that's AL-MONITOR.com, and use promo code POD25, POD25 for a discount.
Okay, we're back. Jared, this announcement by the Trump administration in Oman, it came very quickly after the latest round of Israeli strikes on Houthis in Yemen. What does this mean for the Houthi conflict with Israel?
Well, Houthi officials have publicly responded to President Trump's comments about this apparent suspension of this campaign, and they've made it pretty explicitly clear that they have no intention of halting what they describe as their own military operations in support of Gaza, which of course has consisted over the past nearly 2 years or year and a half of lobbing, ballistic missiles, anti-ship ballistic missiles, anti-ship cruise missiles, and drones at ships, commercial bulk carriers and tankers off the coast of Yemen. So U.S. officials have underscored that a lot of these ships, many of these ships, have had no connection to Israel, but there have been shifts in the Houthis' tactics and which types of ships they've been targeting. In recent months, they've overwhelmingly been targeting U.S. warships, though there haven't been any clear instances of particularly close calls in at least the last few weeks, although one of the U.S. aircraft carriers did have to take a bit of an evasive maneuver last week, resulting in the loss of an FA-18. But anyway, the point is, senior Houthi officials are signaling that they're going to continue their attacks in some form or another to continue putting pressure on Israel to release the blockade of humanitarian aid into Gaza, which is now either approaching or into its second month contiguously. So we saw just this week a Houthi ballistic missile detonate near Ben Gurion Airport near Tel Aviv, penetrated Israeli multi-layered air defenses, which of course are bolstered by at least one, if not two, U.S. THAAD ballistic missile interceptors. So a significant concern that Israel is still going to have to potentially face these Houthi attacks. What remains unclear is the extent to which the United States is going to provide defensive support for Israel. It's likely that the U.S. S. Truman is going to be leaving the region. The Carl Vinson is probably going to stay on in the region for some time. And whether or not U.S. fighter squadrons will be authorized to engage Houthi combatants in Yemen or missile infrastructure in Yemen in defense of Israel remains unclear at this time. The Houthis are saying that they will not fire on U.S. forces if they are not fired upon themselves. So that seems to be the contours of the truce right now. It does not seem to include Israel as far as the Houthis are concerned.
Jared, thanks a lot for your time, and we look forward to more of your reporting.
Thanks, Adam. Appreciate you having me.
Thanks for listening to the Al-Monitor Brief. Be sure to follow Al-Monitor for more on the stories impacting the Middle East. Until next time, I'm Adam Lucente.